Did you know that the Contemporary Resort in Walt Disney World was supposed to represent the future of construction? You see, back in the late 1960s, when Disney was gearing up to build Walt Disney World, they were looking for a number of companies to partner with for both financial and operational help. This was the era before Disney deciding to do everything on its own. That's where US Steel comes into the picture. A few years prior, President Kennedy sort of accused US Steel of price gouging, and so as a result they had what you would call an image problem, and they figured what better way to solve an image problem than by teaming up with Mickey Mouse himself. So the two companies made the deal. US Steel would pay Disney somewhere around $50 million, and in return they would be able to build two of the first hotels on Walt Disney World property. They would own the buildings themselves, but Disney would still own the land that the buildings sat on. They would lease the land to US Steel, and they would also run the company. And so they would have this sort of team partnership with each hotel. Now, US Steel, or specifically their subsidiary American Bridge, thought that these projects would be fantastic ways to demonstrate what they thought the future of construction would be, which was a technique called modular construction. The technique called for building an empty frame on site and then building all of the rooms separately in a factory somewhere off-site. Each room would get its own walls, ceiling, bathroom fixtures, everything down to the mirrors, and then when it was complete, it would get shipped off to the hotel site and then slipped into the frame where it would be permanently fixed. US Steel thought this would be a faster and cheaper way of building. See, normally when you build something, you need to build the structure first, and once that structure is completed, then you can start building the rooms inside of it, and you can flesh them out. However, if you have one team working on the frame on site, and then you have another team working on the room somewhere else, you could, in theory, build the hotel twice as fast. They also thought it would be great for noise pollution and energy conservation, because each room would have their own set of walls, floors, and ceilings, as compared to a normal building where you'd sometimes share walls. And so the heat and the cold air would be more insulated, sound would be more insulated, and it would be a win-win. So US Steel got to work. 3 miles away where Port Orleans is today, they had built a factory and they started working on these rooms for the Contemporary. And when they did get up to speed, they were putting out about 40 rooms a week. Unfortunately, this is where things started to fall apart. Now, by design, these finished rooms would just easily slip into the frame. However, more often than not, that didn't actually happen. A lot of the times it wouldn't fit, and then they would have to resize the rooms so that they would fit, and that would add both cost to their budget and it would add time to their schedule. Just to give you a sense of how poorly this went, US Steel originally estimated that each room of the Contemporary would cost about $17,000 to build. By the time the Contemporary had opened, they had found that each room cost closer to $100,000 to build. On top of that, extra time was needed because they had to alternate between which side of the hotel they were putting the rooms into. Because they were just empty frames, if you put too many rooms on one side, it would settle at an angle, and so they had to alternate back and forth between sides to keep the weight distributed evenly. And the monorail was even a problem. The original plans for the hotel actually called for the monorail to run straight through the center of the hotel. However, the engineers were unable to design the building in a way that would actually offset the vibration that the monorail would cause, which would understandably become an issue for the guests staying at the hotel. So ultimately, they actually had to settle for putting the monorail off-center, which is why you see it to the side today, and they had to anchor the monorail to the ground itself rather than the building. Again, changing up these plans cost more money and added more time to the schedule. Ultimately, on seemingly every level, the construction for this hotel was a mess. Disney ended up having to fly in 6 expert carpet layers toward the end to add carpets to the 1.5 million square feet of flooring in the hotel. These carpet layers actually often slept in the rooms they were working on so they could be so close to the project, and they sometimes worked up to 16-hour days. The night before Walt Disney World's opening, the hotel still wasn't finished. It was weeks away, and at that point, Disney had realized that they weren't going to be opening it along with the rest of the theme park. However, even though the interior wasn't finished and wasn't ready for guests, Disney decided that the exterior still had to look completed so it would look nice for all of the guests coming, as well as all of the press who would be covering and judging this opening. And the problem was there was no landscaping at all outside of the Contemporary. It just looked like this dirt patch with this weird building plopped down on it. So with less than 24 hours until the opening of Disney World, Disney ordered 4.5 acres of sod and had it shipped directly to the Contemporary. And this is the crazy part. At that point, all hands were on deck. Whether you were a construction worker or an executive in a suit, you were called upon to help lay down sod so that by the time the park opened the next morning, it would at least look finished. And it worked. By 6 a.m. that morning, even though it wasn't, the Contemporary Hotel looked finished on the outside. Modular construction would never really catch on as the wave of the future that US Steel hoped, but the Disney's Polynesian Resort was actually also built with a similar technique, except instead of sliding the rooms into a frame, they were stacked on top of each other. Today, the technique still exists and it is used sometimes, although it is not as popular as some had hoped it would be. As for their ownership, Disney quickly realized through this long and arduous construction project that they probably wouldn't be good partners with US Steel. So in December of 1971, Roy Disney had the Disney Company buy out US Steel's interest in both of the hotels for $50 million. US Steel easily agreed to it, and Disney became the complete owners of both hotels. So it's just a quick look at how the Contemporary Hotel wasn't supposed to be contemporary just in name only, but was also supposed to represent this futuristic construction style that ended up never really catching on. And of course, today we still have the Contemporary and we still enjoy it as one of the more iconic hotels at Walt Disney World. So even though it was sort of a construction disaster, it wasn't a complete loss. I want to thank you all for watching. Whatever you're doing this week, make the most of it. If you have a suggestion for a future Did You Know Disney, feel free to leave it in the comments below, or you can let me know on Twitter @RobPlays. If you want to learn more about construction in Disney World, I have a Did You Know Disney all about the Swan and Dolphin, and I also have a Did You Know Disney episode all about Disney's America, which was a theme park they were hoping to build, but ended up never happening. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.